Hey everyone. As we're probably all very much aware of, I sure am, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well, but the established media, not just in Canada, the US, the UK, a lot of Western democracies, they're having a pretty hard time, pretty hard go of it, trying to keep viewership up and ad revenues going, right? To keep them funded and sustained. Now, the problem they're seeing today is they actually have real competition. Now, prior to the internet opening up a whole new market for people to put forth completely different narratives, sources, ideologies, even philosophy. Everyone that I like when I was growing up, my parents and their parents, my grandparents, they only had, you know, national news, like broadcasters, and national radio broadcasters to listen to if they wanted to learn anything about the world outside of their own personal circumstance, their own personal community, right? In the modern era, in the modern world, people have a lot more options. There's a lot more competition out there vying for your minds, right? And what we're seeing now is the reflection in that on the established media. And this is an article from the JSource, the Canadian Journalism Project. Headline is Peter Mansbridge debating his legacy. So, when I was younger, yeah, Peter's Mansbridge, the National, right? The National. I mean, I remember my grandmother, she would stay up. It was always on late in the evening. But my grandmother, even when she was really, really old in her years, she would stay up late to watch the National with Peter Mansbridge, right? But like I say, these are people that come from a totally different era. The new, like the younger generation of the modern era, like I say, they live in the internet age, right? In the information age. So they don't have to necessarily tune in or turn on to one of these massive monopoly type conglomerates like the establishment political platforms. And I mean, CBC is the biggest one can. I mean, Canadians are now robbed to the tune of over $1 billion a year to pay for this dinosaur that's now not even, it's, like I say, they're not giving people actually objective journalism no more. It's just they've become basically, instead of being adversarial to government, they've just the mouthpieces for government, right? And they're seeing the results and the reflection of that happening in real time. And let me scroll down. I'll tell you. Well, I'll post a link to the picture in this video so you'll see it with your own eyes, and you'll see this is a chart showing the National's viewership over 25 years. So it goes back to from 1991 to 2016. And if you see it, it'll look like a roller coaster, but it's all down. There's nothing swinging up, right? But it's just, or a downhill. If you were a downhill skier, that'd be like, damn, that looks fun. Oh, is that one of the extreme hills, right? Because it's definitely not a bunny slope. That's a pretty steep decline we got going on there. So they were at one stage of the game back in 91, and it was probably higher then, but this is, like I say, this is a 25-year time frame. But it was like probably almost 1.5 or 1,450,000, or just below that, around there, was the amount of people that were tuning in to the National in 1991. Fast forward to 2016, you're now down to 400. What's it like? Looks like 490,000. So almost a million, almost 2/3 of viewership is gone. And like I say, in any other private sector where that business model relied on actual funding from the people that consume the product, well, like I say, not much of a decline. They would have failed. They would have filed for bankruptcy. Actually, it looks at this stage of the game, probably would have done it back in the early 2000s. At that stage, you'd be like, yeah. This is not a fundable model anymore. We're losing money hand over fist. So, but because, like I say, because they have the power to use government, right, to force Canadians to pay for them and prop them up, well, they don't seem to be as concerned when you listen to the way they talk. Matter of fact, they seem quite emboldened, quite arrogant, actually, at times. Like, wow, you're really that arrogant and emboldened? Well, because they have government on their side, so that's why they are. But without government funding them, like I say, they're in some of the most precarious situations economically and as far as employment-wise goes. So they really should start to show a little more humility and backtrack away from this fucking chest pumping bullshit that they constantly put forth. Because, like I say, there's going to come a day, and it'll probably be when they're in their most vulnerable times in life. There's going to come a day where it's going to hit you hardcore. What a failing endeavor that was to become the political propagandist for your central planning overlords. If you were doing what the people requested and expected of you, which is to hold politicians to account, Canadians would have no problem. I wouldn't have no problem even funding voluntarily the CBC. You know, if you did what you were supposed to do, right, and weren't so goddamn politically biased, then Canadians would willingly dole out a small portion of their income to help support and sustain an outlet that has such wide reaches in all over Canada. We would be totally on board. I guarantee you that. But because we recognize that now you're just using your platform to present false narratives, false dialogue, propaganda, and bullshit that keeps the masses indoctrinated, informed, right, or ill-informed, then no, I don't want to pay for you to completely, ruin or destroy proper intellect or dialogue or the ability of people to learn proper information, right? So what this really comes down to is, if the CBC truly wanted to have a fully sustainable platform where they didn't have to worry about relying on government stealing from Canadians and transferring that wealth to them for the paychecks, then they would do what the Canadian people want. But like I say, they know where with Canadians they would have to appease you or appeal to you, right, and do what you're asking or require of them. With government, they don't. With government, they just tell them, hey, if you want us to repeat and regurgitate what you got to say, well, you better force Canadians to keep fucking paying for us, right? So it's all about voluntary or using force, and CBC continues to prove that they prefer the model of using force rather than offering a service that the people appreciate enough that they will pay for voluntarily. And that's going to take me right on into the next article, which is basically in line with the same thing. So this was, like I say, jsource.ca, Peter's Mansbridge debating his legacy. Next one. And this one is in reference to CTV. And actually CTV, I've seen the chart with comparison to them to CBC. Now, they're subsidized to a certain degree, I believe, as far as I understand as well, but not nearly as heavily as something like the CBC, the national broadcaster, right? But even they're doing better than CBC on some metrics, and I've seen that chart and the correlation, and I'll share that as well in this video so you can see it for yourself. And that comes from the original article that I just read from. But listen to this headline. This is one here is out of the Financial Post. After layoffs at local news stations, CTV union calls on government to help media industry. So once again, and like I said, I've shared on prior occasions, I believe. I uploaded it. I'm pretty sure I've shared it, but like the Globe and Mail, I believe it was. But I mean, all the established media outlets are now wanting to use theft as their new business model because they know it's much harder to try to backtrack and change everything that they've been doing because they're doing things wrong. So their business model will fail on their current trajectory. And rather than change trajectory, change course, and do the right thing, like I say, they keep looking to use government and wealth redistribution, the force of government, right? The power to use wealth redistribution as a means to an end. That's their go-to method nowadays. They don't even want to try to raise and elevate themselves to become, better representations or representatives of the Canadian people or the Canadian voices. They just want to, like I say, this race to the bottom, it's rampant and it's fast-paced and it's propagated throughout so many aspects of the business and political communities in Canada that it's hard now to discern the difference between private and public anymore because, like I say, it's just this third way. It's destroyed natural incentives, natural market forces, proper ethics, proper morality. I mean, it's destroyed so many aspects of just way economies and societies should thrive and survive. Toronto, a union representing more than 12,000 of Canada's media workers, is calling on the federal government to help support local news after CTV announced layoffs in 3 cities in Ontario. Bell Media spokesman Scott Henderson, which Bell Media, they have a monopoly on everything in Canada, and they're still having a hard time. What's that tell you? That tells you you have a failing business model. Why, like, when you're sitting, all these people sitting in the boardroom, isn't there no one that raised their hand? Because, no, they wouldn't, because they'd be fired, right? Like, there should be some in these boardrooms raising. Shouldn't we be doing what the people want, right? Don't you think they'd be more willing to support us financially if we did what they want and we're truly adversarial to government instead of being mouthpieces for them? But there's apparently nobody sitting on those boards. There's some of them sitting saying, well, let's just get government to help fund us, right? Like I say, failures on so many levels. Bell Media spokesman Scott Henderson would not specify how many people lost their jobs, but said in an email that the company reduced a number of broadcast positions at local TV stations in Kitchener, London, and Windsor. He said the move is part of a larger restructuring that began earlier this year and is in response to the challenges facing the media industry, including growing international competition and a tough advertising market. So, like I say, they don't like competition. They're scared of competition. This is, like I say, in Kazakhstan, and not full-on socialist, but fairly socialist Canada, like I say, the race to the bottom is so rampant now where everybody's just like, that's how everyone knows how to deal with anything. Look to government as a means to an end now. Like I say, what's that old saying? Eventually you run out of other people's money? Yeah. And we're fast approaching that stage nowadays if you look at it on the landscape and recognize it with wide open eyes, right? Unifor spokesman Howard Law said in a statement that more cuts are expected at CTV stations across Canada, and the federal government should move quickly to review the industry, which it promised to do in the federal budget released last week. He said the government could help through regulatory and tax changes, right? So regulatory would don't allow voices or dissenting voices or international voices or international outlets to have their say on the grand stage, right? And tax changes. So give us more subsidies, prop us up. Like, what a bunch of failures these fucks are. You're never going to win, like I say, in this modern world, in the information age. I don't know why they want to keep. It's like back in the day when there were, when the car was introduced, and when the Model A and the Model T, Henry Ford, right? Streamlined the assembly line and production of automobiles. It's like the people that ran the horse and buggy and carriages business back in the day, lobbying to, no, you got to stop these car manufacturers from even trying to compete. No, subsidize the horse and buggy industry. Hey, if you don't, we'll all lose our jobs. We won't be able to pay in any more taxes. Fear and threats and lobbying efforts, all this bullshit. It's the same thing. Sorry, in the modern age of information, no matter how many threats, no matter how much you try to lobby government to squeeze out your competition, it's not going to happen, right? You'd have to shut down the internet completely to make that come to fruition, which is just not going to happen. Stop begging and clamoring to your political masters to prop you up. Ideally, what you should be doing, like I said, sit back when you're sitting in those little board meetings. Maybe you should bring a real person in there one time and let them tell you. Because I tell you, there's lots of us out there who could tell you how you could establish a proper business model tomorrow that will be successful, sustainable, and actually will flourish rather well. And it's called doing your job. Become real investigative journalists. Be truly objective in your reporting. And if you got something to say, make it known in a completely different platform where you put forth your opinion pieces and your bullshit narrative and your propaganda. But in the mainstream establishment news media, leave all that shit to the wayside. Forget about that crap. Because it's not going to help you. It's not going to help better educate or inform your public. And they're never going to align with you as long as they know that you're lying to them. Or twisting and distort the narratives. Or ill-informing them. Or indoctrinating them in any way in regards to ideology or political preferences. And hopefully they'll come around. If not, okay, adios. See ya. It was nice to know ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. People will replace and step up to take your place if you refuse to give them truthful information, objective reporting. Like I say, that's a vacuum. If you're willing to leave that void open, There's someone going to come in and fill that vacuum, fill that void up. I guarantee it. And there are people like out there right now, chopping at the bits, waiting to do so. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.